Let me tell you something that nobody in the UK university brochures will ever tell you. There are students right now sitting in tiny rooms in British cities, eating instant noodles 3 times a day, not because they are lazy or unprepared, but because they spent so much money on rent that they have almost nothing left for anything else. And the number that is breaking their budgets? £500 every single week, just for a room, not a flat, not a house, a room. And in 2026, this is not an exception. This is becoming the norm across the UK, and it is happening faster than most students and families even realize. If you are planning to come to the UK to study, or you are already here and feeling the weight of these costs every single month, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I am about to share with you could genuinely change how you plan, how you spend, and how you survive in one of the most expensive student housing markets in the entire world. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to walk away with real, practical, immediately usable information that most students only wish they had known before they signed their first tenancy agreement. The biggest survival tip I have is coming at the end of this video, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. Welcome back to NestPath UK, your honest guide to navigating life and study in the United Kingdom. I am so glad you are here today, because this topic is one of the most important things we have ever covered on this channel. If you are new to NestPath UK, hit that subscribe button right now, because every single week we bring you real talk, real numbers, and real advice that you will not find in any university prospectus. Now let us get into it. And let us start not with statistics, but with a story, because I think stories make numbers feel real in a way that charts and graphs never quite can. Imagine a student. Let us call her Priya. She worked for 2 years after finishing her undergraduate degree back home. She saved carefully, applied to a well-known UK university, got accepted, felt the most incredible joy of her life, packed everything she owned into 2 suitcases, and landed at Heathrow on a cold Tuesday morning in September. She had done her research, or so she thought. She had looked at accommodation on the university website. She had budgeted roughly. But what she had not fully understood, what nobody had clearly explained to her, was that the accommodation she had booked for convenience and safety was going to cost her £480 every single week. And that was before she bought food, topped up her Oyster card, bought stationery, paid for her phone plan, or dealt with any of the dozens of small, unexpected costs that come with setting up a life in a new country. Within 6 weeks, she was stressed, sleep-deprived, and seriously questioning whether she had made the right decision. Priya is not a fictional character. Priya is a version of thousands of real students who arrive in the UK every single year, completely blindsided by the reality of accommodation costs. And the reason this keeps happening is because nobody is having the honest conversation loudly enough. Until now. So let us talk about what is actually happening in the UK student housing market in 2026, why it got this bad, and what the smartest students are doing to survive and even thrive inside this system. The numbers first, because the numbers are genuinely hard to ignore. According to housing researchers and student accommodation tracking organizations, the average weekly cost of a student room in a major UK city has crossed £500 in 2026. In London, that average is even higher, sitting comfortably between £550 and £700 per week for a standard en-suite room in purpose-built student accommodation. In cities like Manchester, Bristol, Edinburgh, and Birmingham, you are looking at £400 to £550 per week for similar options. Even in cities that were considered affordable just 4 or 5 years ago, like Leeds, Nottingham, and Leicester, prices have risen sharply, and students are now routinely paying £350 to £450 a week. Multiply any of those numbers by 50 weeks and think about what that means annually. We are talking about spending between £17,000 and £35,000 a year on accommodation alone, for a single person, in a shared building. That is not a small number anywhere in the world. Now here is where it gets really important to understand why this is happening, because if you understand the cause, you can start to make smarter decisions. The UK has been facing a housing supply crisis for years, and the student housing market sits right inside that larger problem. The number of students coming to study in the UK has grown dramatically over the past decade. Universities have actively recruited more international students because international students pay tuition fees that are significantly higher than domestic fees, sometimes 3 or 4 times higher. That money matters enormously to university budgets. But here is the catch. While universities expanded their student intake, they did not build nearly enough accommodation to house all those extra students. The demand for rooms went up. The supply of good affordable rooms did not keep pace. And in any market, when demand goes up and supply stays flat, prices rise. That is not complicated economics. That is just what happens. At the same time, private landlords who used to offer affordable housing to students have been leaving the market in large numbers. Changes to tax relief rules for landlords in England made it less profitable to rent out properties, particularly smaller ones. Many sold up. Many converted properties to short-term holiday lets instead because those are often more financially rewarding. The result is that the pool of affordable private rental housing available to students has shrunk considerably. And what has stepped in to fill that gap are the large corporate purpose-built student accommodation providers, the PBSA companies, and they are not competing on price. They are competing on amenities, on convenience, on the feeling of safety and community, and they are charging accordingly. There is also a psychological dimension to this that I think is really worth naming. When you are a student arriving in a new country for the first time, particularly as an international student, you are scared. You want to feel safe. You want certainty. You want to know that your room is booked and that you do not have to navigate the complicated private rental market from thousands of miles away. The PBSA providers know this. Their marketing is designed to speak directly to that fear and that need for reassurance. And so students pay the premium, not necessarily because it is the best financial decision, but because it feels like the safest one. Understanding this is important because it helps you see that you have more options than you might initially feel you do. So what are those options? Let us walk through the full landscape of student accommodation in the UK in 2026, because knowing your options is absolutely foundational to making a good decision. Purpose-built student accommodation, the PBSA blocks, are the most expensive option in almost every city. They typically offer ensuite rooms, shared kitchens, high-speed broadband, laundry facilities, social spaces, and sometimes gyms and study rooms. Bills are usually included. The experience is managed, modern, and relatively hassle-free. But you pay heavily for all of that. As we discussed, £500 a week or more is the typical range in major cities. If you are in the first year and your university is guaranteeing you a place in their own halls, that can sometimes be slightly cheaper and still offer a safe managed environment. University-owned halls vary a lot in quality and price, but are generally more affordable than private PBSA. Always check your university's own accommodation options before going straight to private providers. Private house shares are where the financial picture changes most dramatically. Renting a room in a private house or flat with 2, 3, 4, or 5 other people can bring your weekly cost down to between £180 and £280 per week, even in competitive markets. In smaller cities, you can sometimes find rooms for as little as £150 a week. Yes, you are giving up the gym and the cinema room and the 24-hour reception desk. But you are potentially saving £150 to £300 every single week. Over a full academic year, that saving could amount to £6,000 to £12,000. That is a life-changing amount of money. That is a flight home every month. That is a buffer fund that protects your mental health and your studies when unexpected things happen, because unexpected things always happen. Homestays, renting a room inside a private family home, are an option that many students overlook entirely. They are less common than they used to be, but they still exist, and in some areas they offer remarkable value, sometimes including meals. Costs can be as low as £140 to £180 a week. For students who are new to the UK and feeling apprehensive about independent living, A homestay can also offer a level of human connection and practical support that no corporate accommodation block ever will. Location is another lever that most students underestimate. Living 30 minutes outside the city center rather than right next to campus can reduce your weekly rent by £50 to £150 in many cities. UK public transport, while not perfect, is generally reliable enough that a bus or tram commute of 20 to 30 minutes is completely manageable as a daily routine. Over a year, a difference of even £70 per week in rent adds up to over £3,500 saved. That is significant money, and it is money you have simply because you were willing to look a little further on a map. Now here is something I want to address directly, because I know some of you are thinking it. Is it actually safe to rent privately in the UK as a student, especially as an international student? The answer is yes, absolutely, as long as you take sensible precautions. Never pay a deposit or rent before you have seen a proper tenancy agreement. Never send money to someone you have not verified. Use your university accommodation office as a resource. Many universities maintain lists of approved private landlords who they have vetted and who have agreed to certain standards. Those lists are genuinely useful and they are free to access. You can also use platforms specifically designed for student house shares where you can find verified housemates and verified properties. The private rental market does have bad actors in it, as every market does, but navigating it safely is entirely possible with the right approach and the right information. Let us talk about something else that is absolutely critical and that many students get wrong: understanding exactly what is included in your rent. This sounds simple, but the number of students who sign a contract without fully understanding whether bills are included is genuinely alarming. In purpose-built student accommodation, bills are almost always included, meaning electricity, gas, water and broadband are covered in your weekly fee. In private rentals, this varies enormously. Some landlords include bills in the rent, others do not. If bills are not included, you need to budget approximately £30 to £60 per person per week on top of your rent to cover your share of utilities, depending on the size of the property and your usage habits. Always get clarity on this in writing before you sign anything. Ask specifically, is electricity included? Is gas included? Is broadband included? Get the answer in writing. Do not assume. Now here is something that NestPath UK has talked about before, and I want to bring it back today because it is one of the most powerful pieces of advice we can give any student in the UK. Apply for every financial support you are entitled to and do it early. For UK domestic students, the maintenance loan system exists specifically to help with living costs, including accommodation. But the amount you receive depends on your household income and on whether you study in London or outside London. The London weighting is significant. Make sure your financial assessment is completed accurately and fully, because many students underclaim simply through incomplete paperwork and end up receiving less than they are entitled to. For international students, check your university hardship fund and bursary options. These are not widely advertised. You often have to actively ask about them. But they exist at the vast majority of UK universities, and they can provide meaningful financial support in difficult periods. And now the tip I promised you at the beginning of this video, the one that most students never find out about until it is too late. In their second and third years, many students move into private accommodation. And here's the thing that almost nobody tells first-year students. Your university almost certainly maintains a list of approved private landlords who rent specifically to students, at rates that are often significantly lower than the open market, because these landlords have ongoing relationships with the university and value the reliable tenant pipeline that provides. These lists are not advertised on the main university website. They are not in the prospectus. You find them by walking into your university accommodation office in person and asking directly, or by visiting the student union and checking physical notice boards or speaking to the housing advisor. Students who find their accommodation through these channels consistently pay less, deal with fewer problems, and have the backing of their institution if issues arise with the landlord. One conversation with your accommodation office could save you thousands of pounds a year. Please have that conversation. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge something that does not get talked about enough in content like this, and that is the emotional cost of housing stress. When you are spending the majority of your budget on rent, when you are anxious about whether you can afford to eat properly or get home for the holidays or cover an unexpected expense, that anxiety does not stay in a box separate from your studies. It bleeds into everything. It affects your concentration, your sleep, your relationships, and your ability to actually get the most out of the extraordinary opportunity that studying in the UK represents. If you are in that place right now, if housing costs are genuinely creating serious stress and pressure in your life, please reach out to your university student support services. Every UK university has them. They are there specifically for this. You do not have to be in crisis to deserve support. You just have to be struggling. And struggling with housing costs in the UK in 2026 is one of the most common and most understandable experiences any student can have. Here at NestPath UK, we believe that being informed is the single most powerful thing a student can be. Because when you understand the market, when you know your options, when you ask the right questions, and do the research with enough time to make a real choice rather than a panic choice, you put yourself in a position where £500 a week does not have to be your reality. You put yourself in a position where you can make a decision you feel genuinely good about, one that fits your budget, your lifestyle, and your goals. So let us recap everything we have covered today. UK student accommodation costs have reached £500 a week and above in major cities in 2026. The reasons are structural. Supply has not kept pace with demand, private landlords have left the market, and corporate providers have stepped in at premium prices. Your options range from expensive but convenient purpose-built accommodation all the way down to private house shares and homestays at dramatically lower costs. Location choices can save you thousands of pounds annually without significantly impacting your quality of life. Understanding what is included in your rent before you sign is non-negotiable. Financial support through maintenance loans, hardship funds, and bursaries is available, but you have to actively claim it. And the single most underused resource available to you is your university accommodation office and the approved private landlord lists they maintain. That is everything for today on NestPath UK. If this video gave you something valuable, if it opened your eyes or answered a question you have been sitting with, please give it a like right now, because that one small action helps us reach more students who need exactly this kind of honest, practical, real-world information. Leave me a comment below and tell me which city you are in or planning to move to, and tell me what you are currently paying for accommodation. I genuinely want to know, and I genuinely read every comment this community leaves. If you are not yet part of the NestPath UK family, subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. We are here every week, giving you the information and the confidence to make the most of your time in the United Kingdom. I will see you in the next one. Take care.